Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is a pioneer in MMA. He has crossed over to pro wrestling as well. His name is none other than Ken Shamrock, and he returns today to Submission Radio. Ken, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for that introduction, and it's always a pleasure to get on and be able to talk about the good old days and do a little reminiscing with the fans.
That's exactly what we love, and I think the fans love it as well. Now, we last time we spoke to you was quite a while ago. It was months back. Tell us, Ken, what's been new in your life, and how's the past year been for Ken Shamrock?
Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of things have been changing within the last 10 years. I have really focused on trying to rebrand myself. I went from being, the world's most dangerous man, I don't know how many world champions, probably 7 world titles through wrestling, and through different MMA organizations, just always rose to the top and was able to succeed in everything that I did. But there was this time that it was, I needed to change. I needed to make a change because I couldn't stay that person. And I had to try and develop some businesses and different things around what I have already created. So for the past 10 years, I've really tried to rebrand myself. I tried to stay connected to my fans and try to deliver something to the fans that would still be a part of who I am, a part of my character, a part of what they love seeing, and then turn it into some sort of business in which we could all enjoy together. And probably in the last 6 months, we probably developed 4 different types of business opportunities that I believe within the next probably, I would say, 3 to 4 months, I'm going to be able to announce these different business opportunities and different things that the fans can get involved with to be able to have fun with me again.
You've definitely piqued our interest. You said you needed to change. I'm just curious, Ken, what do you mean by needed to change, and why? Why did you need to change?
I think what happens a lot of times when athletes come to the end of, their career, I mean, they've been doing it since they were 5 years old or 10, depending on when they picked it up. And it's kind of been, that's just been their thing, and they've always pretty much been good at it. It's been their life. Then there's a time when you do something for that long and it stops. And I think a lot of people don't recognize the different opportunities that you can do from actually doing these things for that long. But what happens is we step away, and then we just think life will continue to keep going as usual. But what happens is the music stops, and you don't hear the people cheering anymore and screaming for your name, and you don't have your buddies around you taking care of you, making sure you're eating right, training right. Hopefully you've kept your family intact, but majority of them have not because they put their career first, and most of them lose the family and the kids and the connection with the kids. So then when they turn and try to find some sort of stability with that focus or that sturdiness that they would have once they step away from whatever it is they're doing, there's nothing there anymore. Nobody's there to help them through. And so it doesn't just continue on, man. It's a whole nother second part of life you have to live. And people say, well, you could just live off of what you made. Well, a lot of guys blow their money. And, maybe even if they do have money, it still doesn't fill that void of the excitement and the adrenaline and the rush you get from doing these type of things. And so therefore you have to find something to fill that void. So I think that that's what happens when you get to the end of your career. The ones that are smart realize that they've got to make a change. They've got to start looking at other things that will help fill them voids, to help fill that empty space that they have, that they're going to have, and be able to fill it with something positive. And, I realized that after maybe a year or 2 years out, I realized that, this is not going to be an easy change. And so I started trying to find the right people, you're just trying to get the right people, surround the right people around you. Sometimes you make mistakes as you're doing that, and you just have to, move on and get somebody else. But But I think that is really where you see a lot of these guys turn to drugs and alcohol and women and whatever else they can to fill that emptiness. And I realized that, there was a change that needed to be made. And not to say that I didn't go through my time, because I did, but I realized that, I needed to start thinking of other things that I could do that would make me happy, that would still involve my fans and keep the excitement in my life. And so when I say, having to rebrand yourself or make a change, that's what I'm talking about, is because it just doesn't go and do it by itself. That's why you see a lot of these guys, when they do retire, they just seem unhappy. They get overweight. They just don't seem fired up and happy anymore. They're only 50 years old, man. They're not old. There's a whole other life to live. So when I say make a change, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It sounds like you're doing a lot of smart things. Now, one thing that we covered a while back when you were on our show last time, we spoke to you about Dana White, your relationship, the feud, and we sort of brought up the subject of time healing all and what would have to happen for you guys to sort of make up. Now, I think it was like a day or two later after that interview that I guess a phone call was made and you and Dana squashed the beef. I'm just curious, what happened? What motivated you to call Dana, and was it something we said?
Well, I think what happened was there was an incident that happened with a bodyguard, and of course, since I've been doing some different things with my career and started moving in the direction of doing some protection agency work, all of a sudden I became the expert. I don't know why. I only had a year or two experience into it, but okay, I accepted it. They asked my opinion, and I gave it to them. And I guess Dana White heard of it. He made some comments. And they came back to me and told me what Dana had said, and my first instinct was to fire back, go back at him, but I just had spent some time with my mom and started finding myself a little bit and recommitted myself back to my Savior. So it just came over me that, what, it's time for us to just smash this thing, because I don't even know, sometimes forget why we're even fighting, because I think we both love the same thing. And he's protecting it his way, and I was trying to protect it my way. But the bottom line was that we both love the UFC, and we both want the best for it, and we just have different ways of looking at it. And so I just said, what, it's time to squash this. And so they went back, and they said, hey, Dana, guess what Ken said? And, of course, Dana probably thought I was going to say something smart. And he says, Ken wants to squash it. And Dana said, do you really say that? And he said, yeah, man, he said he wants to squash it. So I guess they hung up, and then an hour later, Dana had called me and said, hey, I heard you want to squash this. And I saw the opportunity for us to put aside our differences and move forward, because, like I said, I think the best thing is the fans deserve better than us arguing with each other and fighting over things that are irrelevant. There's better ways to do it, and I think we should show an example to the young fighters and young athletes out there that there's better ways to settle your differences rather than bash each other through the media.
Now, Ken, speaking of making amends, the other day we were checking out your Twitter, which, by the way, guys, is at Shamrock. Ken, make sure you follow him. And there's a photo of you and Tito signing autographs and having a laugh together. Just wondering, how does it feel to be able to have a laugh with Tito after all the things that transpired between you two?
It's like the house being lifted off of you. For so many years that we were going at each other, and a lot of it had to do with me, because I was at the end of my career and I was fighting so hard to hold on. I wanted so hard to be able to compete with him, and it's just physically not possible. I had injuries. I was 39 years old, 40 and 41 when I fought him. And so it just wasn't possible. But mentally, that's what made me such a great fighter and such a great athlete, was that there was no limitations to what I could do as far as my mind and my body was concerned. And so even when those times come, I had recognized that, I could compete with the average fighter, but to a world-class fighter like Tito in his prime, it just wasn't going to happen, And so, a lot of my anger and aggressions to defend myself and to try and get myself where I thought that I could get, was really where all that anger came from. And, so it's glad that we were able to put it behind us because, again, like I said, it goes the same thing back with Dana White. The fans deserve better than that. The fans deserve to have two great athletes shake hands and say, great job. While they're fighting, all bets are off. Go at each other, do what it is to make you get ready or prepared to get in there and whip somebody. I say go for it. Just do whatever you want to do. But when it's over and, you step away, I think that's where you start becoming a role model to these younger kids coming up, that there are right ways to do things and wrong way to do things.
Yeah, and Ken, I can't imagine the two of you talking too much during a heated rivalry, you and Tito. Now that you had the opportunity to just kind of hang out and chat and be in each other's company, what's something that you learned about Tito that maybe surprised you that you wouldn't have expected?
Yeah, Tito is and again, I know some people that probably on his bad side wouldn't say this, but from what I've experienced and seen around him, because I've been on both sides of it, I've been on the opposite side where you don't like him, and then I've been on the inside where I start to get to know the guy, and I've seen him with his kids and his fiance, and he is a genuine, sweet guy. I mean, literally, the guy has a big heart. And I think that's sometimes hard to see when you're actually in the middle of it. You're on the outside watching a guy prepare to fight, and he gets angry and those things. And I think that's what a lot of people thought of me for a long time until I let everybody in and let them know who I really was. And I think Tito's the same way. I think Tito has a big heart. If you cross him or you try to hurt his family, and that means the fans too, then of course he's going to get angry, and you're going to see the bad side of him.
Now, Ken, just switching topics for a second here, I just want to talk to you about some big news that came out last week with the UFC, and it was the announcement of the new Reebok uniforms for fighters. I was just wondering, as somebody that's an icon in the sport and knows really about how much money fighters are making from sponsors and how important it is for them, what did you think when you heard the news?
Again, I speak my mind, and I don't say anything to try and hurt anybody or to discredit anybody, but I think it's a bad move. I think that you're treading into waters where you're taking away opportunity from managers, from gyms, from fighters. When you start handcuffing them and actually telling them what they have to wear, you're going in some deep waters here where you're going to start getting things that you don't know that are down there, and you start stirring up some stuff that you probably don't need at this point. But, I don't like it. I think, you're basically going in and you're really infringing on these guys. Might have some opportunities, which they're already taking that away when they have to approve it anyways. So a lot of that stuff is happening. I would like to know, what they're giving in return. What are some of the benefits that the opposite, because this is a negotiation, really it should be. I mean, you're not telling a guy, hey, this is what we're going to do, shut up and fight and like it. I don't think that's what they're trying to do, but I think that there should be some opinions and some at least some concerns about what the fighters think about it or what the management thinks about it. Maybe they've done that. I don't know because I haven't really been paying attention. But again, like I said, I really think that from the outside looking in, and I don't know what's going on the inside, and I could be completely speaking out of turn here, but it just doesn't look good to me.
Now, obviously an icon in MMA, and you've been fighting at the highest level for a really, really long time, but there was always a beginning for you when you fought before people really got to know you. And I'm just wondering, how much of a difference did sponsors make to you as a fighter? That extra couple of $1,000, how much of a difference did that make to you as a fighter? And do you think that this might affect some of the lower tier fighters who really need that kind of money to sort of get through a training camp?
Well, what I hope is going to happen, and from what I'm hearing and understanding, is that's happening is the guys are getting paid more, and that's kind of what I'm hearing is that their checks are going to go up. And if that's the case, well, then now we've got a different story here. The guys are making more money. and I'm guaranteed more money, and they're not going to worry about going and getting these sponsors, then absolutely, because if Reebok or whoever's coming in and they're putting names on these shirts and they're getting big money for it and they're kicking that back down to the guys that are on the card, hey, that's great. And that's what I heard. That's what I heard they were going to do. So again, if that all happens, I think that's great. And but I'm talking about a guy from the outside looking in. It's it just doesn't look very good. But again, we don't know everything that's going on that the UFC is doing behind the scenes before we can really make a clear judgment, a real clear call about whether we think it's fair or not, because we don't know everything that's going on or that's going to go on after they make the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is one of the main things. A lot of the key, I guess, the facts are still missing. Now, something else that we wanted to talk to you about, Ken, there was more big news, UFC 181. You're obviously a guy with a pro wrestling background, and one of your fellow kayfabe brothers recently joined the UFC roster. Of course, we're talking about CM Punk. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on Punk going to the UFC, especially at such a late point in life?
I think it's great. Especially if he's got the ability. He sounds like he's got a great wrestling background, a really good wrestling background. And a guy like that, if they give him a guy that's a top 10 fighter, that's not fair. But if they'll give him, a guy that's, got 1-0 as a pro or 1-1 as a pro, and start him out right, like they should have done with Brock Lesnar. They should have probably got him guys that didn't have 15 fights, that was an ex-world champion for him to fight on his first or second or third fight. And groom this guy, I think it's tremendous. I mean, a lot of guys are complaining, why is he in there, this and that. Listen, I wouldn't be complaining about why he's in there. I'd be fighting my tail off to get on the undercard or to fight him.
Yeah.
So some of these guys that are complaining out there, it's like you guys are really not looking at the big picture here. It's about dollars and cents. Yeah. If he can put people in the seats and build this business to a bigger model and be able to put more money into your pocket on the card, why are you getting mad about that? You should be wanting to be on that card. So I think it's a great move on his part. On the UFC's part. And we will see if it's a great move on his part.
Now, Ken, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here and sort of ask you the question that a lot of people are wondering. The thing with you and Brock Lesnar was that you guys were so accomplished in grappling. You were accomplished in a whole range of skills, and you were developed, in MMA. Then you went back to wrestling, and then you went back to MMA. I'm just wondering, CM Punk, he doesn't have any skills that we really know of. He's got some grappling ability that he started developing recently. In your opinion, as a professional fighter, can he pick up the skills needed to be a successful fighter in the UFC at the age of 36 without a background in MMA in such a short period of time? Can he do it?
If I was training him, I would put my reputation on it, and especially if he's getting the right fighter, somebody of his caliber that doesn't have five fights or 10 fights as a pro. If they're going to give him somebody that's around his caliber, 1-0, 2-1, something where it's reasonable. I especially with what I know about his background and what he's done before he became a pro wrestler with his collegiate career and stuff like that, I would put my reputation on it that I could get this guy to win his first fight. Just because I've done it through my whole career, I know how to take guys, I know how to mold them, and I know how to beat the specific guy, especially when they don't have that much experience.
Interesting. I mean, I'm not sure what your schedule is like. I understand, obviously, you're doing security. Are you still training people, and would you possibly train CM Punk if the opportunity presented itself?
I do train, but I get very, very selective on who I train. Right now, I just work with my kids. Mm-hmm. But I would take that in a heartbeat because I just know what I could do with him. I know exactly what it would take for him to get a win.
And, obviously you were one of the most successful crossovers ever when it comes to going from MMA to pro wrestling. I guess for a lot of MMA fans listening at home, can you just explain to us how difficult is it making the transition from MMA and pro wrestling? And what do you think are the hardest things about making that transition back and forth?
Well, I think the hardest thing is basically one, with pro wrestling, there's so much freedom. Even though you're traveling all the time, your time is used up all the time. but I think it's the amount of time that you got to put in to prepare for a fight. It's that 3 months or 2 months that you've got to lock yourself in and you can't have any distractions. To me, that would be the hardest thing for him to come from wrestling into fighting, is to be able to stay focused on one individual for a 2 to 3 month period and not have any distractions, because in pro wrestling you got all kinds of distractions and things going on and moving from place to place, and it's exciting. When you prepare for a fight, it's absolutely, completely quiet. I mean, you have to focus on training, eating, sleeping, preparing for one guy for 2 to 3 months, and everything else stops.
And, just lastly on CM Punk, you're a guy that's worked with both companies, UFC and WWE, and have a great mind for pro wrestling and MMA. In your professional opinion, do you see CM Punk returning to the WWE eventually after his MMA run? Or do you see this as CM Punk's new career path, and we're probably not likely to see him in the WWE again?
This is what I think. I think if he brings the right people in, and I wouldn't suggest him trying to make a long career of the UFC, at least not right now, not until, you get a couple of fights under your belt and see where you're at, especially at his age. But what I can see is for him to get a couple fights under his belt, get those wins, and then his career in pro wrestling would skyrocket. But his thing is he's got a lot of people around him right now that think they know what they're doing with him, and they may. But from what I'm hearing, they're trying to teach him a lot of stuff. And, I'm not going to give away my secrets, but if he brings in the right people, this guy could really skyrocket his career in pro wrestling. And if he chooses to move on, then he can go for one big payday and take a shot, and then he can step away. But you're not going to have a long drive at this, because, one, you're starting out at an older age, but you can make an impact in a short amount of time. But like I said, right now in his career, where he's at right now, his biggest decision right now is making the right decision on who to bring in. That's the biggest decision right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ken, just going back to you, a quick look through your Twitter feed, which obviously is at Shamrock Ken, it shows a staggering amount of tweets from your wrestling fan base. It seems as though a lot of people still very much remember the things you did during the Attitude Era. And I mean, you're a guy, you weren't even in the WWF for that long, but you did make an impact. Are we any closer to seeing Ken Shamrock inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, or at least making an appearance on Monday Night Raw?
I'm not sure. I would hope so. Like I said, I think that, I did enough. I thought I made, I think the proof's in the pudding. The wrestling's definitely not the same that it was before I was there. It's definitely changed since after I was there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a statement for himself. And I also believe that, even though there's a lot of talk back and forth, I think that the people at WWE are professional, and that there's a lot of stuff going on with them right now that they need to maybe step away, take a look about what it is that they're looking at, what it is that's going on, look at the landscape, and try to make the right decision on what's best for the company. And you know what? After everything is said and done, all the stuff that we say to try and hype people up, the bottom line is this: I still believe that there's people there that can make the right decision for WWE. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I believe that they will.
Last time you were on the show, you mentioned that you don't really speak to the WWE very often. There's not much communication going on between you two. But since you've spoken to us, you were a part of the WWE 2K14 video game, which we were all very excited about. Just wondering, has there been any more headway made, in your communication with the WWE, and have you been speaking to them a little bit more in the last 6 months?
I haven't spoke to them directly, but I've definitely gotten some. Some locker room talk. But again, that doesn't mean anything. But, they have never said anything negative about me. I just haven't heard anything.
Now, Ken, just going back to UFC, something good and obviously a good sign that things are great between you and the UFC. Your photography is currently featured on the UFC Fight Pass, meaning, obviously people can watch all your fights. Just for all the fans listening out there, what's a good fight that stands out to you that you can recommend for the fans to check out, and why is that?
Well, I would have to say there's a couple of them. One of them was the second fight with Royce Gracie. And the first one to me, if you watch that first fight, you'll see they took my shoes away. And my feet, when I go to try and push off the mat when I'm on the bottom, when he rolls me and I try to get my knee up inside, I go to try and push off the mat and my feet are slipping. And you'll watch that fight. And that's what got me in trouble there. And I hadn't fought without shoes ever. And they took them away the night before the fight, saying that we couldn't use them because they're a weapon. Well, he got to use his gi, and that was a weapon. Okay, so forget about that. But then watch the second fight with me and him. And then you'll see that the difference between being able to at least have a heads up about how the fight is going to be run with or without shoes, being able to train with it, being able to prepare for that. And then you see a whole different outcome of that fight. And keep in mind, when you watch the two fights, keep in mind that I had 2.5 years of experience in grappling. Royce had 25 years with 50 years of experience behind him. If you look at the odds tables on that, it would have been 100 to 1 that I could even win the fight. And that's how much experience that there was above me. And there was no coaching for this. I had to do all of it on my own. I had to do the research. I had to do the training. I had to adopt the ground and pound. That was the first time you ever saw a guy sit in the pocket, stuff the hips, and pound a guy. And then people developed it, became a little bit more better at it. But, I had to develop that in order to fight a guy that had that much more experience than me in the grappling arts. And then I'd say probably, there was so many of them. Yeah, I would have to say just the difference between those two fights, not being prepared to fight and then being prepared for the fight.
Absolutely, and all the fans need to make sure they check those fights out because there's a lot of classics there. I think a lot of the modern fans still haven't gotten a chance to watch. Ken, we've got a few fan questions for you, but before we jump to them, just speaking of the future, we just wanted to get your opinion. Just going back to the WWE for a second, the company, has taken a big step forward. They're focusing on PG. Just wondering, in your professional opinion, when Vince McMahon retires, or let's say he retires tomorrow and Triple H takes over the company, do you think it thrives like it did in the 2000s, well, in the 90s when you were a part of it? Or do you think that it declines at an even higher rate than it has already?
Boy, that's speculation. I really don't know. It's hard to tell. There's just, I couldn't even comment on that because I just don't know.
That's entirely fair enough. Well, we've got one more question in regards to wrestling, and obviously it involves TNA. While you were in pro wrestling, you were a part of TNA, and TNA took a major blow when they lost their TV deal with Spike. What, in your opinion, have you heard anything, and what do you think went wrong for the company?
Well, I think they're in a tough spot. I think it wasn't just TNA that was hurting. You look at it was all the way up to the WWF. Or E. You look at all the way across the board, pro wrestling was really going down. You've got to look at the landscape from 30,000 feet up. It just wasn't TNA. It just happened to have a bigger impact on TNA because they don't have that big cushion and didn't have the space to lose any money and continue to keep working as they were, whereas WWF does have that capability. So they took, obviously, the fans could see a bigger hit on them, but WWF took just as much a hard hit as everybody else in the wrestling world.
Absolutely. Now, Ken, jumping to these fan questions, we got our first question from a username by the name of Giza. He'd like to say that you're one of his favorites and also ask you a question. He'd like you to tell us about Steve Blackman. Was he as legitimate as people said he was? And do you have any stories and experiences with him?
Well, I know Steve was a legitimate striker. Guy had great karate experience, was a good wrestler, and me and him rolled around in the ring for a little while just to go do some experience and see what he had. And he's a legitimate tough guy, and he's not the kind of guy you want to meet in a dark alley.
Okay, fair enough. Now, we've got another question. This is from one of the Sherdog users. His name is Bisexual MMA, believe it or not. And his question is, yeah, have you been approached for a paid ambassadorial, a Bellator role like Hoist Gracie?
Wow. You know, I just what my goal is to be able to have the opportunity to be able to work with the young kids and young athletes, and be able to answer any questions for them as they move forward in their careers, to really try and help them get these obstacles that they may face along the way, which I've already faced, and be able to help them get through those times. But as far as having a role or a job or anything like that, I've never really thought about it. I'm just doing it just because I just want to do it. So, I mean, if somebody came up and said, "Hey, we'd love you to be a part of this, and can you jump in and be a part of what we have going here?" As long as it has something to do with to improve the company and be able to help young athletes and young kids to move forward in their careers, I'm always going to be about that.
And a great answer there, Ken. Now, we're going to finish up the interview with something that we call the Submission Radio Tap-Out Round. It's where we throw a whole bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing in mind. Are you ready, Ken?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how has the world of personal security been for you in 2014?
Well, I say there's a future.
Okay. Ken, what are your New Year's Eve resolutions?
That it will be better than the last.
Do you think that Frank Shamrock belongs in the UFC Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Do you think Brock Lesnar returns to MMA?
No.
This one is actually from a fan. His name is Khabib Fan from the Sherdog Forums. He wants to know, what was your funnest fight?
My funnest fight would have to be Masakatsu Funaki in Japan. We went 46 minutes.
Wow. Now, Ken, how often do you still train?
Every day.
WWE champion or UFC champion? Which one would you choose and why?
Both. And the reason why is because I do both. And they're both, to me, I get to entertain the fans, and I get to be able to mingle and enjoy that. There's been nothing better than to get in front of 120,000 people and hear them chant your name. That, to me, that's just, there's nothing else, no feeling like it. So I would not give one for the other.
We hope that one day we'll experience like 100 people chanting our name. Now, Ken, thoughts on Sting's WWE debut?
Awesome.
And finally, Ken, if you could have...
Electrifying and awesome.
Wonderful. And finally, Ken, if you could have one dream match with any opponent, past or present, in the MMA world, who would you choose and why? And this is anybody from past to present, one person who you haven't fought. Who's one name that would be a dream match for you?
Whether I fought him or I didn't fight him?
Oh, it'd be someone that you never fought.
Oh, that I've never fought. Brock Lesnar.
Wow, that would definitely be selling out a pay-per-view right there. Ken, we really want to thank you for your time. Guys, don't forget to follow Ken Shamrock on Twitter at ShamrockKen. And don't forget to check out his website, kenshamrock.com. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, Ken. We could probably chat to you for days because you're a fascinating guy. Hopefully we'll chat to you soon, and thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And again, like I said, it's always a pleasure to be able to talk to my fans out there. God bless you guys, and thank you for all the support over the years. Love you.